The art of non-reaction in daily life. Have you ever wondered why some people remain calm in the face of chaos while others explode at the slightest provocation? What if I told you that mastering just one simple skill could transform your life, helping you stay peaceful, focused, and in control, no matter what challenges come your way? Science shows that our brains are wired to react impulsively, a survival instinct from our ancestors. But here's the surprising truth: reacting emotionally often does more harm than good. In fact, studies reveal that people who can regulate their emotions enjoy better relationships, make wiser decisions, and even live longer. In today's video on Zen Buddhism wisdom, we will uncover the secrets behind non-reaction, why we react impulsively, how Buddhist teachings can help us break free from this cycle, and practical techniques to cultivate unshakable inner peace. Stay with me until the end, because I'll be sharing a powerful story and a life-changing technique that monks and masters have used for centuries to remain calm in any situation. Let's begin. Why do we react? The science spirituality behind it. Before we can truly master the art of non-reaction, we must first uncover the forces that drive us to react in the first place. Why is it that we so often find ourselves at the mercy of our emotions, responding with anger, fear, or frustration before we even have time to think? At the core of our reactivity lie two powerful influences: biology and ego. One is an ancient survival mechanism, hardwired into our nervous system, ensuring our ancestors could escape danger. The other is a construct of the mind, obsessed with protecting its fragile sense of self. Together, these forces shape how we interact with the world, often trapping us in cycles of emotional turmoil. But what if we could break free? What if, instead of being ruled by these unconscious forces, we could learn to pause, observe, and respond with clarity? True wisdom lies not in suppressing our emotions but in understanding their origins. Let's take a deep dive into why we react, and how, through awareness and practice, we can liberate ourselves from the grip of impulsive emotions. Imagine a world where every shadow hides a predator, where hesitation means death. This was the reality for our ancestors. The ability to react instantly, to flee from danger or fight for survival, was essential for life in the wild. Deep within our brain lies the amygdala, an almond-shaped structure responsible for processing threats. The moment danger is perceived, the amygdala hijacks our rational mind and floods our system with stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. Our heartbeat accelerates, muscles tighten, and vision narrows, preparing us to either fight or flee. This response served us well in the past. But today, we are rarely chased by wild animals. Instead, our threats are more subtle: an angry email from a boss, a rude driver cutting us off, or an argument with a loved one. Yet, our brain cannot distinguish between a real physical threat and an emotional one. It reacts the same way, sending us into emergency mode over trivial matters. A simple disagreement triggers the same response as being hunted by a tiger. But are we truly in danger? To understand the consequences of reacting without awareness, let's look at the story of Emperor Ashoka, one of history's most profound examples of transformation. Ashoka was a fierce and ambitious ruler of the Mauryan Empire. His thirst for power led him to wage brutal wars, slaughtering thousands in the name of conquest. He was feared, ruthless, and utterly reactive in his decisions. But everything changed after the Battle of Kalinga. As he walked through the blood-soaked battlefield, he saw not victory but devastation: corpses of soldiers and civilians, children crying for their lost parents. It was then that he asked himself, "What have I done?" The war that had brought him power had also shattered his soul. He realized that his reactions, his need to conquer, dominate, and defend his pride, had only led to suffering. Overcome with remorse, he sought refuge in Buddhism, dedicating the rest of his life to peace, compassion, and wisdom. Ashoka's story reminds us that reaction often leads to regret. When we act impulsively, we risk causing harm, not only to others but to ourselves. The question is, Can we pause before it's too late? Beyond biology, another force governs our reactions, the ego. Unlike the amygdala, which seeks to protect the body, the ego seeks to protect our identity. It constructs a self-image and does everything in its power to defend it. Every insult, criticism, or failure feels like an existential threat, not to our life, but to our sense of self. If someone questions our intelligence, the ego feels attacked. If we lose an argument, the ego feels humiliated. If we are ignored, the ego feels invisible. This is why we react so strongly to minor provocations. A simple comment can make us feel disrespected, rejected, or inferior. But here's the truth, the ego is an illusion. The self that we so desperately protect is nothing more than a collection of thoughts, memories, and beliefs. It is not who we truly are. The great Zen master Hakuin Ekaku once had a student who was falsely accused of fathering a child. The townspeople turned against him, branding him as dishonorable. His reputation was shattered. But when confronted with the accusations, he simply replied, "Is that so?" He neither defended himself nor retaliated. He did not react with anger or despair. He remained still, unmoved by the storm around him. Months later, when the truth was revealed and his innocence restored, his response was the same, "Is that so?" What can we learn from this? The wise do not cling to praise, nor do they resist criticism. They understand that the ego is just a passing shadow, and therefore, there is nothing to defend. The tragedy of reactivity is that it enslaves us to a false self. We spend our lives protecting an illusion, exhausting ourselves in battles that need not be fought. True freedom comes when we realize that there is nothing to protect. By understanding these two forces, biology and ego, we begin to see how they manipulate us. The fight-or-flight response urges us to react before we think. The ego convinces us that every slight is an existential threat. But neither is our true master. The moment we recognize this, we reclaim our power. Instead of reacting in anger, we respond with understanding. Instead of reacting in fear, we respond with awareness. Instead of reacting in ego, we respond with wisdom. True mastery is not about never feeling emotions. It is about creating space between impulse and action. It is about choosing how we respond to life instead of letting life control us. And in that space, between impulse and action, lies the key to inner peace. The Buddhist perspective on non-reaction. Buddhism teaches that true inner peace comes from detachment, not detachment from life, but detachment from impulsive reactions. A mind untrained in wisdom is like a leaf caught in the wind, tossed and turned by every gust of anger, fear, or desire. But a mind rooted in awareness remains unmoved, like a mountain standing firm amidst the storm. Non-reaction is not passivity, it is mastery. It is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. To understand this, we must explore three core Buddhist principles: mindfulness, sati, impermanence, anicca, and the illusion of self, anatta. These are not abstract concepts but practical tools, capable of transforming how we experience life. Mindfulness is the art of seeing reality as it is, not as our emotions distort it. When we react impulsively, we are slaves to our emotions. But when we observe them with mindfulness, we create a gap between stimulus and response, a sacred space in which wisdom can arise. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor." This is the essence of mindfulness. Instead of being consumed by emotions, we become the witness. Imagine a monk meditating by a river. Leaves float by, some beautiful, some rotten. He does not cling to the pleasant ones or reject the ugly ones. He simply observes. The river is his mind. And the leaves are his thoughts. This is how we must observe anger, fear, and frustration, not as enemies to be fought, but as passing phenomena to be understood. Consider the story of the Buddha and the angry man. One day, a man, furious with the Buddha's teachings, approached him and began to insult him. He hurled words of hatred, expecting a reaction. But the Buddha sat in perfect stillness. When the man finished, the Buddha simply asked, "If someone offers you a gift, and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, confused, replied, "To the one who offered it." The Buddha smiled, "Then I do not accept your anger, and it remains with you." This is the power of non-reaction. When we do not accept negativity, it has nowhere to land. It dissolves on its own, but mindfulness is not just for sages, it is for everyday life. When someone cuts us off in traffic, when our boss criticizes us unfairly, when a loved one speaks harshly, we have a choice. We can react instantly, or we can take a breath, recognize the emotion, and watch it with curiosity. In that moment, we reclaim our power. Buddhism teaches that all things arise and pass away. No moment, no thought, no emotion is permanent. The storm of anger may feel overwhelming now, but like all storms, it will fade. The key is to remember this in the midst of emotional turbulence. The Buddha illustrated impermanence with the story of King Pasenadi, who, despite his wealth and power, was tormented by the fear of loss. He asked the Buddha, "Is there nothing in this world that is unchanging?" The Buddha replied, "Great King, everything you see, everything you love, even your own body, is subject to change. This is the nature of all things. Clinging leads to suffering, wisdom leads to peace." When we deeply understand impermanence, we no longer fear change, we flow with it. We do not react to emotions as if they are absolute truths, we see them as passing clouds. If anger arises, we do not fight it, we simply say, "Ah, anger is here," and watch it fade. If sadness comes, we do not drown in it, we observe it, knowing it too will pass. Even the joy we cherish is fleeting. Instead of clinging to it desperately, we appreciate it while it lasts, like a flower in bloom. Impermanence does not make life meaningless, it makes it precious. When we stop grasping, we begin to live. At the heart of all suffering is attachment to the ego. We react because we feel personally attacked. But Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, a constantly changing stream of experiences, not a fixed identity. In the story of the samurai and the Zen master, a warrior approached a monk and demanded, "Tell me the nature of heaven and hell." The monk looked at him and said, "You are nothing but a stupid, arrogant fool. You don't deserve such wisdom." The samurai, enraged, drew his sword. Just before he struck, the master said, "That is hell." The samurai, stunned, realized his mistake, and tears filled his eyes. The master then said, "And that is heaven, the lesson. Hell is the prison of ego, where every insult wounds us and every loss threatens us. Heaven is the freedom beyond ego, where nothing can shake our peace." If someone insults us, but we realize there is no fixed me to defend, then what is left to react? If someone praises us, but we know praise is just sound in the air, then what is left to grasp? The Buddha likened the ego to a mirage. It seems real, but when examined closely, it vanishes. When we no longer cling to the idea of a permanent self, we no longer need to prove ourselves, defend ourselves, or react to every perceived slight. We become unshakable. True strength is not in overpowering others, but in mastering oneself. When we train in mindfulness, we become the witness rather than the prisoner of our emotions. When we understand impermanence, we stop fighting what is fleeting. And when we see through the illusion of self, we no longer react out of pride or fear. A river does not resist the rocks in its path, it flows around them. A wise person does not resist life's challenges, they move through them with grace. This is the art of non-reaction. This is the way to peace. Practical techniques to cultivate non-reaction. The ability to remain non-reactive is not about suppressing emotions or becoming indifferent, it is about cultivating awareness so that our responses arise from wisdom rather than impulse. When we master non-reaction, we free ourselves from the cycle of suffering caused by unnecessary emotional turbulence. 1. The pause method, creating space between stimulus and response. Imagine holding a burning coal in your hand. If you throw it at someone in anger, they may be harmed, but you will be the first to get burned. This is the nature of reaction, it hurts us first before affecting others. The first step to mastering non-reaction is learning to pause before responding. Buddhism teaches that this space between stimulus and response is where wisdom is cultivated. There is an old parable of a man who was struck by an arrow. Instead of removing it, he demanded to know who shot it, what kind of wood it was made from, and where the feathers came from. In his obsession with reacting, he prolonged his own suffering. The lesson here is clear: when something painful happens, do not react blindly. Instead, cultivate a moment of stillness. The moment you feel anger, frustration, or fear rising, pause. Do not act, do not speak. Just allow yourself to be still. Then, take a slow, deep breath. Inhale deeply, hold for a few seconds, and exhale slowly. Deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, shifting your body from fight or flight mode into a state of calm. Next, observe. Instead of being consumed by emotion, step back and become the witness of it. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Is this anger, fear, or pride? Simply recognizing your emotions lessens their control over you. Finally, choose. With clarity, decide if a response is even necessary. More often than not, silence is more powerful than words. If a response is needed, let it come from wisdom, not impulse. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. 2. The mirror technique, seeing yourself in others. A great Zen master once asked his students, what is the difference between a saint and an ordinary person? The students gave many answers, but the master simply smiled and said, a saint sees himself in everyone. How often do we react harshly to others, forgetting that we have made similar mistakes? When someone is rude to us, our immediate reaction is to take offense. But what if, instead of reacting, we asked ourselves, have I ever done something similar? If you have ever been late, you will find it easier to forgive someone else's tardiness. If you have ever spoken out of frustration, you will hesitate before condemning another's harsh words. This shift in perspective is transformative. Instead of seeing others as enemies, we see them as reflections of ourselves. The 13th century Persian poet Rumi once wrote, yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I am changing myself. When we recognize our own flaws in others, the need to react diminishes. Instead of judgment, we cultivate understanding. Instead of defensiveness, we nurture patience. This simple shift in mindset has the power to dissolve conflicts before they even begin. 3. The 5-second rule, harnessing time to prevent emotional outbursts. In the heat of the moment, emotions override logic. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and aggression, takes control, making us say and do things we later regret. However, studies show that delaying an emotional reaction, even for a few seconds, allows the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain, to regain control. A simple yet highly effective way to do this is the 5-second rule. Whenever you feel the urge to react negatively, count backward from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This small delay interrupts the automatic reaction cycle and gives you time to choose a mindful response instead of an emotional outburst. Many great leaders throughout history have practiced this in different forms. Abraham Lincoln, for example, would write hot letters when he was angry, venting all his frustrations on paper. But he never sent them. He waited. By the time he revisited the letters, his anger had passed, and he saw the situation with clarity. Most of those letters remained unsent, and he avoided unnecessary conflict. We, too, can develop this habit. Before sending an angry message, before raising our voice, before acting on impulse, pause, breathe, count backward. In that space, wisdom is born. The more we practice non-reaction, the more we realize that most conflicts dissolve on their own when left undisturbed. What once seemed urgent no longer feels important. What once triggered us loses its power. Non-reaction is not about being passive, it is about being in control, not of the world, but of ourselves. Stories of non-reaction in action. One day, a monk sat in deep meditation under the shade of an old banyan tree when an enraged man stormed toward him, shouting insults. His words were filled with venom, his face red with fury. Yet, the monk remained unmoved, his expression serene. The more the man insulted, the more frustrated he became at the monk's silence. Finally, unable to contain himself, the man demanded, "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you deaf or simply too cowardly to defend yourself?" The monk opened his eyes gently and smiled. "Tell me," he said, "if a man offers you a gift, and you choose not to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, confused but still angry, replied, "To the giver, of course." The monk nodded. "Then I do not accept your anger. It remains with you." In that moment, the man's fury dissipated like mist under the morning sun. He realized that his anger had no power over the monk, not because the monk was superior, but because he simply refused to engage. The energy we do not accept has no power over us. Just as we can refuse a gift we do not want, we can refuse the negativity others try to hand us. True strength lies not in reacting, but in remaining unmoved. A fierce samurai, known for his skill in battle, approached a wise Zen master and demanded, "Tell me, what is the difference between heaven and hell?" The Zen master looked at him and scoffed, "You? A mere soldier? You are nothing but a brute, a mindless fool wielding a sword." The samurai's blood boiled. How dare this old man insult him? In a flash, he drew his sword, ready to strike. But just before he could bring the blade down, the master raised his hand and said calmly, "That, my son, is hell." The samurai froze. The truth of the master's words hit him like a thunderbolt. His own anger, his own inability to control his reactions, had placed him in hell. Overwhelmed with realization, he dropped his sword, bowed deeply, and with tears in his eyes, he whispered, "And what is heaven?" The master smiled. "This," he said, "is heaven. Heaven and hell are not distant places, but states of mind. We create hell when we allow our anger to control us. We create heaven when we cultivate peace within. The gates of both lie within our own reactions." One day, as the Buddha was walking through a village, a Brahmin priest, full of resentment, confronted him. "You are a fraud," he spat. "You teach nonsense, leading people astray." The Buddha remained calm, listening patiently without a trace of anger. Seeing no reaction, the Brahmin grew more furious, his insults becoming even more vicious. Yet, the Buddha did not waver. After a while, the Brahmin, exhausted, stopped. Only then did the Buddha speak. "If someone offers you food, and you refuse to eat it, what happens to the food?" The Brahmin hesitated. "It remains with the giver," he admitted. The Buddha smiled. "Likewise, if I do not accept your insults, they remain with you." Shamed and humbled, the Brahmin fell to his knees, realizing the futility of his anger. An insult is only harmful if we choose to accept it. True wisdom lies in letting negativity pass through us like wine through an open field. In feudal Japan, there was a humble tea master who served under a powerful warlord. His skill in tea ceremony was unmatched, but he had no training in combat. One day, while traveling, he accidentally offended a samurai warrior, who challenged him to a duel at sunrise. Knowing he stood no chance against a skilled swordsman, the terrified tea master sought the warlord's advice. The warlord, instead of offering him a sword, simply said, "Tomorrow, face the samurai with the same calmness you show in your tea ceremonies." The next morning, the tea master arrived at the duel ground, his expression as serene as a still pond. He bowed deeply, just as he would before preparing tea. He breathed deeply. Unshaken. The samurai, expecting fear, was stunned by the tea master's composure. He hesitated. "Who are you?" he asked. "You do not seem like an ordinary man." The tea master smiled. "I am simply a servant who has learned the art of stillness." Seeing the tea master's unshakable presence, the samurai was moved. He sheathed his sword. "There is no need for bloodshed today," he declared, walking away. True strength is not in aggression, but in composure. When we face conflict with stillness, even the fiercest opponent may retreat. Each of these stories teaches the same fundamental truth: non-reaction is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. When we no longer allow external forces to dictate our emotions, we transcend suffering. The world will always throw challenges our way, but how we respond determines whether we walk the path of peace or remain prisoners of our own impulses. Imagine living each day with an unshakable sense of calm, no longer controlled by anger, fear, or frustration. Imagine facing challenges not with stress and anxiety, but with clarity and wisdom. This is the power of non-reaction. It is not suppression. It is not indifference. It is the ultimate freedom, the ability to respond, not from impulse, but from deep awareness. Right now, you have a choice. The next time someone tests your patience, instead of reacting, take a breath. Instead of lashing out, observe. Instead of letting emotions dictate your actions, choose your response with wisdom. These small moments of non-reaction will transform your life, one breath at a time. Join us on this journey of mindfulness and self-mastery. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism Wisdom and become part of a growing community dedicated to living with peace, clarity, and purpose. Let's cultivate a life of true inner freedom together.